Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said Friday he will make a decision on whether to launch a 2024 presidential bid relatively soon. I felt very confident going into November 22 we were going to do very well, but you really had to put up or shut up on that, DeSantis said in a news conference marking the end of Florida's legislative session, referring to his re-election last year. Let's see what else is down here. I also understood that we had this opportunity here to be able to really do a lot of great stuff. And I've always said that we're going to see this through, he continued. What happens in the future, we'll get on that relatively soon. You either put up or shut up on that as well. DeSantis is widely expected to launch a bid for the Republican nomination. Reports emerged last month suggesting the former congressman was planning a campaign launch in May or June. However, he dismissed them as inaccurate. If there's any announcement, those will come at the appropriate time. But if anyone's telling you that somehow they know this or they know that, that's just inaccurate because there's not been any decisions made, DeSantis said. He regularly polls in second place in GOP primary surveys behind only former President Trump. The Florida governor currently sits about 29 points behind the former president, according to a polling average from 538. Several other Republicans have launched campaigns challenging Trump, including former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, conservative entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, and former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, but they have largely failed to gain much traction in the polls. Republicans who have also weighed potential campaigns include former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, and former Vice President Mike Pence. So, I'm fairly confident that DeSantis will run, but I'm also fairly confident that he's doing himself more harm than good by staying out as long as he has. And the reason for that is simple. When you're dealing with somebody that's got a lead on you by 20-something points, and that person is the former president, and they've been in this race since November, I think you're doing yourself no favor by just week after week, month after month, delaying your decision on whether you're going to get in there or not. I really believe that. I think if he had been very intelligent, politically anyway, he would have gotten in this race back in either March or April. Probably, I'd say mid-March, because that's around the time that Williamson got in the Democratic one, and she's experiencing a surge of like 10 points, and her battle should be way more harder than DeSantis's, but that's besides the point. Anyways, I think if he had gotten in the race back in March or February, or hell, I almost want to say January, if he got in the race back then, and he had been campaigning in Iowa and New Hampshire and whatnot, and actually going after Trump as the person who lost to Biden, who's weak on crime, all types of other points he could make. I think his lead, instead of a 29-point behind Trump thing, he'd probably be, I'd say, either 10 points or 5 points. I really believe that. I think he could still get in, and he could still do, maybe even possibly become the nominee, although I still would favor Trump if that's a betting game that we're playing, because I just think Trump's lead over the rest of them is just too giant. But I really believe he screwed himself up by waiting as long as he has. I think he should have just... What probably happened is he had this ego thing, because we talked before about people who run for president have to have some amount of ego, some more so than others. And he was like, oh, well, I'm polling better than everybody that's already in there, so I have nothing to gain by jumping in this early. Let me do my legislative session. But when you're someone who's an incumbent governor and you're trying to not repeat the same mistake that Chris Christie made in 2012 of, I just got elected to this term and it's only halfway into my tenure, he really should have, if he didn't want to look like someone who was just, jockeying from one job to the next, because that's how it looks when you run for governor, get reelected in November, and then run for president the next year. He could have just only had one term. But again, he didn't want to do that, because what actually is going to happen is he in his heart wants to be President DeSantis. But he knows from the standpoint of a careerist politician that if his presidential campaign goes awry, and he's not in the White House in 2025, he can at least still be governor. And if he didn't run for governor and was just a private citizen, it'll be harder to get attention. Which, I mean, it's all it is just kind of shows you that the state of Florida is second fiddle. Like, no matter what he's saying about legislative session, he's looking for the earliest convenience for him to run for president. And I think he's going to keep screwing himself over in both ways. He's going to give his state a lack of attention, and he's going to give the presidential race less attention than he could have given if he had just gotten in back in March. And it's going to end up making it harder for him to catch up to Trump. Because look, he might be able to say, I'm still in second place, but that second place is a distant one. When you're 20-something points down from somebody, you need to be campaigning in Iowa and New Hampshire like it's nobody's business. So all this sticking your toe in the water stuff isn't going to cut it, I think. But we'll see if the voters are okay with this crap.